Welcome to another week of Cheers TV. Dan Sims, Ben Edwards. Today we are going to talk about Grenache. Grenache, who knows? They're all in here in this lineup.
Absolutely.
The inspiration for this actually came from the fact that the Tour de France is now rolling around, and we've also got some wines in Australia that are inspired by the wines of France, but it also happens to do very well in Spain.
But also I've got to say, there's something about the whole thing about Grenache. We tend to think of it as a bit of a, well, it kind of sits in the shadows a little bit. But in terms of drinkability, for me, it's always been a little bit of a go-to wine because they're generous, they're generally softer in tannin, they're approachable, and especially, well, we're coming hopefully out of the winter months, very good for this sort of time of year.
But also they tend to be really good value.
Yeah.
Now, a couple of things you need to know about Grenache. What do you need to know? It loves the sun. It performs very well in very hot areas, but it also has a bit of a problem. It crops huge. It'll go nuts in the vineyard if you let it. So you've got to be very tight on how the vines perform so you can increase quality. Now sometimes it'll get away from you and you'll make really insipid, lolly, raspberry confectionery wines.
Turn it into rosé.
And then you turn it into rosé. Why not? I mean, we all love rosé, it's great. But when you do it well and you do it seriously, they're really beautiful wines, and they've got a lovely sort of herbal complexity that underlies it all, which is really terrific. Of course, it's often used as a blended wine, and we know about these wines: Grenache, Shiraz, Mourvèdre, Shiraz, Grenache, Mourvèdre, Mourvèdre, Grenache, Shiraz, whichever one it may be. This is how we usually see them in the Australian landscape. So let's get started. We're going to go straight to the McLaren Vale.
McLaren Vale. Now, when you think about Grenache, I tend to think about McLaren Vale for great quality Grenache. Tends to produce these really lovely, vibrant styles. But I haven't seen this one before, but you've actually just had a try. Well, this is the Oliver's Teranga Grenache, 2008. Pretty tough vintage. How's it coping?
Well, look, I think it shows the difficulties of making 100% Grenache. Now, Corinne's a great winemaker. Her Shirazes are really, they're tour de force. This wine's struggling a little bit, and I think it's showing the fact that maybe it's just gone a bit too far to one edge. And it's a little bit corked, a little bit baked. You know, it's showing some almost fortified baked fruit characteristics. With food, it'd probably change completely, but at the moment it seems to be lacking a little bit of freshness. Her wines, and I do mean this, are beautiful as a general rule, but 2008 had this massive heat wave, and also we're seeing maybe just in this lack of concentration because of the challenges that the vintage provided. You know, it's still a pretty good drink. We wouldn't put it on here otherwise, and at 87 points, maybe this would have done better with just a little bit of Shiraz in it. And that's the art of the whole blending exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of the blending exercise, the next one we've got the Kaleski, the Claries, which is a blend of the Grenache.
And it's from the Barossa as well.
Absolutely, coming from the Barossa Valley. Now, I just had a taste of that wine. That is super. That is really vibrant and fresh. I mean, look at the colouring and the sort of dark cherry, juicy fruit, raspberry characters. It's a great drink.
It is juicy. But underneath it all, there's this lovely tannin to it as well. It's almost like powdery tannins. And it's really long, and it's a bit chewy, and it's got a like meaty core and personality. And this is 2009. 2009 Barossa, and I've seen a few little blends now of this style, and they're really impressive. I mean, I just want to drink that.
It's kind of thinking like I'd expect to see something a little bit denser and like almost, again, all that sort of cooked sort of style fruit to it, but this is just vibrant. And
super bright,
attractive.
super fresh, and there's another story to it, biodynamic. Now, we've spoken about that in previous issues of Cheers TV, and the whole thing here is that you're just seeing lovely vibrancy, and there's so much life in this wine, it's going to be hard to keep your hands off it. And by the way, retail-wise, we're talking under $20. Super booze. And that's what Grenache often offers. It's often really about the good value end. Speaking of good value, Côte de Rhône, very hard to go past, and this is where the inspiration for a lot of Australian wine comes from. Southern Rhône Valley. Pretty hot down there, pretty flat in most areas, although there are some areas that are less flat than others. But this particular wine from Monredon is the name of it, Côte de Rhône, got lots of Shiraz in it, and it's got a really lovely spicy core. It's a 2007, and 2007, which are what we're seeing in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, similar sorts of blends, have been raved about. And Dan, what do you think?
Well, You know how we talk about all the time about Chablis being one of our luncheon wines? If I had to come up with a red for a luncheon wine, Côte d'Aron is like a bit of a go-to sort of style because you can have one or two glasses, easily. It's not super heavy. You can go back to work, but at the same time, it's not dense. It's not concentrated, but there's got this beautiful, red cord fruit, but spice and a little bit of peppery character to it. That's probably got a little bit of dose of Shiraz than probably normal, would you say?
Absolutely. And the other thing too is, and I always love using the descriptors because, hey, that's what I do for a living, but I love the descriptor of this Provençal garrigue. And when you think Provençal herbs, if you think ratatouille, what goes in there? It goes rosemary and sage and thyme. These are the hard herbs, and you get this lovely undercurrent of that. So a powerful wine, yet light on its feet. Yeah. Good combination. 90.1, 92 maybe. I mean, it's kind of, I'm loving it.
It's
I'm digging
the
it.
tannin for me that makes that really, really refreshing. Okay, even on its own, it's a little bit dry, but if you had food with that, or just some sort of like a braise or something, it'll
slow cooked lamb.
Slow cooked, saltbush lamb, perfect. Absolute no-brainer. I really like this wine.
Now, Spain also has a fair bit of Grenache. In fact, they've got crap loads of Grenache planted there, and they call it Garnacha. And this particular one comes from Navarra. What's it called?
Well, the Atazuri from Navarra. Now, after seeing this wine, first of all, as Ben's pointing out, it's under screw cap.
We love the screw cap.
We love screw cap. But it's a fresher sort of style. It's not to say it hasn't got that sort of spicy undercurrent herbal character you see in that Côte d'Aron, but you're starting to see that little bit more red, vibrant fruit character to it.
And it is about red fruits. It's about, you've got the raspberries, you've got the pure fruity character, but underneath it all, it's just delicious. Refreshing from tannin, not from acidity. So there are different ways that you can get that. And in terms of food, this is almost the sort of one you can just sit around and drink a bit of.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily in moderation. 89 points.
Yep. No brainer, easy, well put together, clean, fresh, lovely wine. And on that note,
we're going to say cheers.
Cheers.